let's get into some climate change news. Let's get into some climate change news because there's a lot. There's a lot. There usually is. Um, the Europe is experiencing again more heat waves. This is from yesterday. Scorching temperatures to boil Europe as heat builds to 38C heat wave. BBC weather forecaster Darren Bett warned temperatures will rise sharply this week across Europe. He said the heat will rise in Western Europe and temperatures could reach as high as 38C. In the southeast of the continent, temperatures will be equally hot with blistering sunshine and dry weather. Hot weather is set to, Mr. Bett said hot weather is set to return across many parts of Europe over the next few days. Again, all the heat is going to be building up from Iberia, where we have got the highest temperatures at the moment. The BBC weather forecaster noted while temperatures are set to rise rapidly, there are still spots that will see some heavy rain. He said we will have the stubborn area of cloud, an area of low pressure that is hanging around through the Adriatic, southern parts of Italy, and the Balkans. And here you go. Very, very warm. That will drift itself very slowly southwards over the next few days. Mr. Bett said the southeast of this wet weather front, the hot temperatures will continue. Hot temperatures and sunshine are expected throughout Turkey and many of the islands in the Mediterranean. In this area of Europe, temperatures could reach as high as 38°C over the coming days. These showers will be heavy and thundery and drifting southward across the Balkans towards Albania, northern parts of Greece. It will be drier for northern parts of the Balkans and northern half of Italy as those showers move their way southwards. All that heat will be building up through France into the Low Countries, Germany and southern Scandinavia. Much of Europe will be dry and sunny, and it is also going to be hot as well. Youch. That is uncomfortable. Andy the Gardener, I had a Facebook friend request from James Howard Kunstler today. Bit surreal. Well, accept it. I'm actually friends with James Howard Kunstler on the Facebook. I don't see a lot of posts from him, though. Let's move on. This is Mumbai. If you guys can see this footage, this is from Sachin Jacob. This is my city, Mumbai. We are experiencing floods every year. In fact, according to the reports by Climate Central, rising sea level will submerge coastal cities like Mumbai by 2050. But it's 2020, and we are already seeing the indications. Will our leaders act now, right? So Mumbai is supposed to be submerged by 2050, but here it is submerged right now. Of course, this isn't a permanent state of submergence or submerging, but if you're submerged several times a year, we could say that you're pretty much underwater, right? If you can expect your city to be underwater several times a year, that's pretty much a chronic condition. Again, this is all over Asia. Continue flooding. Violet Crumble says, Kevin, why is it every time I do a search for anything, I immediately get ads for the same products? Are they monitoring my phone? They're monitoring, yes. They're monitoring your searches. They're monitoring your searches, yes. Yeah. If I ever click on an ad or look, say for shoes, Every single one of my ads will be about shoes. Or if I look at guitars, they show me guitars, whatever. Um, Gritty Chops says biggest flood in 48 years. Yeah. Kiro Hikes. Oh, Hambone told him about me? Okay. Well, maybe that's why. Let's move on. So, yeah, the one thing that the Biden campaign has going for it is some kind of acknowledgement of climate change. This is literally the only thing, and it's not even really that great because, of course, it's kind of heavy on the whole green new renewable energy, green grid kind of Green New Deal thing. But let's look at this a little bit. A totally green electric grid will dramatically speed up climate action. Joe Biden's emphasis on creating a 100% carbon-free system by 2035 could unlock major breakthroughs, but it's a difficult path few other nations are taking. The perfectly green electricity grid sought by Joe Biden isn't the end of the fight against global warming, it's the beginning. Well, yeah, and I would imagine that creating a perfectly green electricity grid might even add to global warming. Is anybody saying that? Is anybody talking about that? And also contribute to the continued destruction of the planet by humans. Today, 40% of America's electricity comes from carbon-free sources. The Democratic presidential candidate has made getting that to 100% by 2035 a centerpiece of his $2 trillion plan to address climate change and create jobs. Getting there would take an enormous expansion of solar and wind capacity in the U.S. I wonder if that includes nuclear. Backed by mass adoption of energy storage technologies and hanging onto existing hydroelectric and nuclear plants. Policy experts question the 15-year timetable for eliminating emissions from the electrical system, which would indeed be an immense challenge. Yeah, well, if we need to get to net zero or zero carbon emissions in 10 years, 15 years is too long, and if they're calling it a problematic timetable, obviously not a lot of people are committed to this timetable. About a quarter of all U.S. emissions today come from electricity production, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Even California, which launched an all-out push to decarbonize its grid in 2002, set a 2045 goal. Wow. The state also has some of the nation's highest electricity prices. Although renewables are only one reason why Sweden and Austria both set all renewable goals to be met within the next 20 years. But they're also both small and have grids that are already plenty green. However, many of those same policy experts also agree that a clean grid is an initial leap that will make many other necessary steps possible, helping reduce emissions from transportation, industry, and buildings. Yeah. I call it the linchpin, says Leah Stokes, an assistant professor from political science at the University of California, Santa Barbara, who researches electric utilities as the electric system cleans up and unlocks other sectors more easily. Okay, maybe. Not everything could run on clean electricity, at least not immediately. Solar and wind alone may never be able to generate enough energy consistently to power a steel furnace or cement plant. Well, there's that right there. Or would it produce enough to build electric cars or electric vehicles or electric trucks or electric planes if they ever exist? The availability of cheap emissions-free electricity would set off ripple effects throughout the economy, bringing within reach other solutions that once seemed impractical. Take the promise of hydrogen as a fuel that burns hot and clean, making it an ideal energy source for heavy industry. Right now, hydrogen is produced mainly by splitting hydrogen atoms from natural gas, an emissions-heavy process. It takes a lot of emissions to make hydrogen, guys. There's that. So yeah, not there. We're not there yet. If it were its own country, the global hydrogen industry would rank 6th in greenhouse gas emissions. Oh my God. So okay, so there you go. They're pointing out the problems with renewable energy, kind of like Planet of the Humans. Oh my God, are these people eco-fascists? Aren't they in reality? Or don't they know how well renewables are doing? How much progress we're making? They're pointing out the obvious problems with these future technologies, right? According to the 2017 data from energy research firm Wood Mackenzie, it's like the size of Germany, says Marion Borgson, staff scientist at the Natural Resource Defense Council Environmental Group. Just cleaning that up would be tremendously powerful. Okay, if we could. We're not there yet. We don't have the technology. We might. Are we going to have the technology in 5 years because we need to go totally net zero in 10? Is this going to happen in 5 years? How about if those fossil fuel power plants were replaced by ones that use cheap, abundant solar energy to extract hydrogen from water? I mean, maybe this can be scaled up quickly. I don't know. Does anybody know about this? Clean hydrogen could be used to run factories or power plants that now rely on gas, oil, or coal. This so-called green hydrogen currently supplies less than 1% of the world's energy needs, according to a report by Bloomberg NEF. But by 2050, hydrogen from all sources could meet 24%. Oh, wow, 24%. By 2050, you say. While the price of green hydrogen could fall to just $1 per kilogram in some of the world's largest markets, making it competitive against even fossil fuels. But is that by 2050, do you say? Well, that can't come soon enough. Then there are all the things that can be powered by electricity, but usually aren't. Cars and trucks are the most familiar examples, but workarounds for gas and stoves. Building-wide heating systems are already available, practical and affordable. Electrifying these things is a start, but to hold warming below the 2°C threshold prescribed by the Paris Climate Agreement, that electricity also has to come from a carbon-neutral source. With a cheap green grid, it might even become possible to suck CO2 straight out of the atmosphere using a nascent technology called direct air capture. Future scenarios modeled by climate scientists in which warming is limited to 2°C almost always rely on these negative emissions technologies. Right. Almost always rely on these negative emissions technologies. Early versions of the direct air capture available today need vast amounts of energy. And using fossil fuels only releases more emissions, defeating the purpose. You see the conundrum here. Just by cleaning up emissions from transport, the electrical grid, and buildings, so Stokes, we can get the vast majority of these problems done. Okay. Well, it's good that this conversation is happening. I support it. I applaud it. However, why isn't anybody talking about greatly reducing our reliance on energy, period? Greatly reducing our energy consumption. Why? Because it would entail downscaling capitalism. It would entail a reversal of our growth paradigm. Right? Nobody's talking about degrowing capitalism or defunding capitalism, degrowing industrial civilization. Gritty Chop says Jevin for president. Jay Ackert, the very real, not made up 2°C threshold. Right. So in all of this talk about what we're going to do about climate change, nobody's talking about maybe people going back to an agrarian society, maybe people getting off the grid, growing their own food, consuming way, way less, lowering their carbon footprint, never taking airplanes again, giving up their cars for bikes. Nobody's ever talking about that. And you all know why. And I'm preaching to the choir, of course. Basil Peterson, the only solutions must mimic nature, meaning net neutral, no growth and no profit. I agree, sir. Basil Peterson for the win. Ding, ding, ding. Gene agrees with Basil Peterson. Ding, ding, ding. Negative emissions technologies brought to you by Michael Bloomberg and Al Gore. Exactly. Right. Yes, Jay Thadcast, we can build 1,000 thorium plants in 10 years. Problem solved. One every 3 days. Exactly. Problem solved. So yes, let's shift the Overton window of the conversation to something completely different. Like maybe we should think up, an alternate to the Green New Deal, right? Because the Green New Deal involves, somehow greening up growth capitalism. That's basically what it is. The original New Deal saved capitalism, right? The original New Deal was Franklin Roosevelt saving capitalism. So we don't want to save capitalism. We want to save humans and the planet. So whatever. This is not human centric. Sorry. But we want to save the planet, meaning habitat for all species, including humans. We want to save the planet. So that means doing something different. No, not a New Deal. Something like, I don't know. Does anybody have anything catchy for an actual plan that we can put in place that would save the planet? I don't know what it is. Nancy Pelosi said the Green New Dream. Maybe it's the Green New Dream. I don't know. But maybe not a deal. That's weird. The degrow deal, exactly. Defund. I like defund capitalism or degrow capitalism. I like that. Bold rope lampposts. Osama, I saw you had you said that the hurricane Isaias decimated Long Island. Really? I don't know where I've been, but I totally didn't see that at all. Degrowth mixed with climate mobilization. Okay, Sandy, that's a good one. The habitable planet dream, Jacob Gordon, I like that. Guyo Smith, a green new virus. John Ziggy Kelleher, eat everyone. All right, you guys are getting creative. I like that. The let's not kill ourselves dream, TCR Galaxy, right. Humans united for the biosphere, I like that. Rich Diana, McConnell cares. Is that your plan? Make the biosphere great again? I like it. Come on, keep them coming, guys. This is great. There's a hashtag that I put on my Twitter account called Stay Home Grow Food. So I think somebody in the chat here put that up. I like that one. Keep it in your pants or keep it in your plants. I don't know. Plant more, buy less. I don't know. Degrow and develop. Degrow and live. Listen to the fucking Lorax. I like that, Jacob Gordon. Exactly. The Lorax for president. Mother Earth contract. That's a good one. Get whacked for wildlife. I like all of these. Okay. Anyways, this is good. Let's keep this going because Beat the rush to collapse now. Yes, Basil. Right. Because we need to fully, we need to conceptualize, a plan for degrowth. We need to counter the Green New Deal, the Green New Deal T-shirt or whatever, with something different. Be authentic. It's not what the planet can do for you. It's what you can do for the planet. I like that. Defund, degrow, de-escalate. Poppy, I like it. This is great, guys. Get eco-friendly poor. Good one, yes. Get poor for the planet. Defund yourself. Quit your job for the earth. Collapse can be fun. Step 1, get sterilized. XR is looking for new material for the next rebellion. Yeah. I think we should. I think let's send XR some new ideas about what something that's alternate or alternative to the Green New Deal kind of ideas, right? Vintage Violet says a good book is The More Beautiful World We All Know Is Possible. I haven't seen that one. Thank you. I will take it on advisement. Oh, this episode is going a little long, guys, but it's okay. It's okay. I want to quickly read something from McCorkle's Corner. It's been a little while since we visited McCorkle's Corner. He left a comment yesterday. He says, "Nothing to worry about, everyone. I just emailed the year 2008, asking about the year 2100's mess showing up on our 2020's doorstep. 2008 claims 2100 owns the abrupt part of climate change, to which 2100 says that 2008 is full of methane. Asked about the exponential warming, I'm full of methane. Asked about the exponential warming, 2008 just shrugs its shoulders. I'm pulling strings to get the 2020s an almost whole decade of livable planet, but keep my decade's diplomacy on the down low because the 2030s will be royally annoyed for what they are about to receive. Amen. Just avoid the 2030s if you can, and if the 2030s insist you join it, run away from the 2030s yelling, stranger danger. Hopefully we can enjoy a few more years wholesome goodness of suicidal overconsumption and overbreeding before things get messy and famishy. No need to thank me, though this collapse would be an utter disaster without my decade's diplomacy. Just wish me luck in leaving the climate mess in front of 2030's screen door, with a card reading, Dear 2030s, enjoy the totally trashed climate, and nanny nah, you can't even get with us in the 2020s because there's no time machine. So suck it. With love, the 2020s. The with love smooths it out, right? Love solves everything except climate change, apparently. The more beautiful world we all know is possible. Ha, LMF. Ecotopia, bish. I like it. Vintage Violet says, or Violate. Why are you violating my vintage Violet? Vintage Violet says, how about unpaved paradise? Excellent. Excellent. Let's move into the last story I want to cover. I know it's really late, and I'm going to have to push some other stories back to tomorrow. But this is from the New York Times. Did you all know this? Sultry nights and magnolia trees, New York City is now subtropical. Winter is warmer and summer is sweltering with torrential afternoon downpours. What's next? Palm trees? This is from July 24th, 2020. It was the fig trees that tipped him off. Something was very unusual at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. It was May in the early 2000s, And Chris Roddick, the head arborist there, was making his rounds when he noticed a big mistake. Months ago, a gardener had forgotten to wrap the fig trees in burlap, which protects them over the winter, an annual rite handed down from immigrants who brought them over from Italy 100 years ago. Mr. Roddick expected them to be damaged, perhaps even destroyed, but they were fine. Actually, they looked great. That year, the garden reaped a phenomenal bounty of ripe figs. Before, we were just trying to keep the plants alive, Mr. Roddick said. Suddenly, it was like, okay, can we grow figs? New species are thriving in the metropolitan area, while those more associated with New England are slowly vanishing. This is because of rising temperatures, which are largely the result of human activity, including emissions from fossil fuels, according to the National Climate Assessment. New York City, after years of being considered a humid continental climate, now sits within the humid subtropical climate zone. The classification requires that summers average above 72 degrees Fahrenheit, which New York's have had since 1927, and for winter months to stay above 27 degrees Fahrenheit on average. The city has met that requirement for the last 5 years. Guys, 5 years. Despite the occasional cold slap. When you think you're getting a cold snap, but you get a cold slap. Sorry. And the winters are only getting warmer. For example, from January through March this year, the average temperature in Central Park was 42.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. The second warmest on record, said Art DiGaetano, director of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Northeast Regional Climate Center. The record was set in 2012. 2012, remember 2012? I do fondly. At 43.1 degrees. Spring, meanwhile, arrived 2 weeks earlier this year. Magnolia and cherry trees bloomed in early March, a pleasure usually reserved for April. The intoxicating blooms were a welcome sight as the city shut down this summer. As New Yorkers enjoy pina coladas served on hot city sidewalks, they are also running for cover when weather events deluge the town, like July's tropical storm Faye, which was bookended by several torrential downpours. The summer of the pandemic is also on pace to register as one of the hottest on record. And then there is the increased prevalence of the tropical sultry night. It is now common in the city for there to be 15 or so nights every summer when temperatures stay above 75 degrees, said Mr. DiGaetano, who added that 60 years ago it was rare to see 10 such nights. In 2012, the United States Department of Agriculture adjusted the city's hardiness zones for plants to indicate the warmer weather. Are you paying attention? New York City is now in another climate zone for plants. Tropical plants such as yuccas and some hardy palms can survive outdoors now in all seasons except winter. New Yorkers can find them in protected sunny areas around the city, like south-facing spots near buildings. The growing period is also longer, which means that plants, branches, and leaves have time to grow larger before the cold sets in. Yet some gardeners are hesitant to embrace the subtropical classification of their city. Extreme low temperatures do damage to plants, not average temperatures, said Todd Forrest, the vice president for horticulture and living collections at the New York Botanical Garden in the Bronx. As of yet, I would not confidently try to grow palmetto palms native to the tropical southeastern United States outside in New York, Mr. Forrest said. 3 days of a polar vortex and the plants would die. He considers the subtropical category as still more applicable to states like Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. For gardening, the city's growing conditions now more closely mirror those of Maryland, coastal Virginia, and Washington, D.C., more than the Deep South. However, if you understand what's been happening in those areas, the climates in those cities are also shifting towards more southerly climes, right? Still, there are plenty of visual clues that now show how subtropical New York City has become. Here are a few of them. Spring comes early. In the early days of the coronavirus shutdown, spring was in full bloom. The scent of pink and white blossoms was tangible. Gerald Giordano, a senior horticulture consultant at the Westchester County Cooperative Extension, says he's noticed many changes to spring in recent years. For instance, his friend in Tuckahoe, New York, now enjoys her gladiolas popping up tall and bright and even multiplying immediately after winter and new occurrence. And ivy leaves are growing to new heights on buildings, some even flowering and bearing fruit. He remembers the moment he noticed the change. In the spring of 2011, things happened in a way that nobody saw before, Mr. Giordano said. We had cherry trees blooming in the middle of March. For me, that was a real wake-up moment. So if you are paying attention, if you look closely, you see the signs of the climate change, or global warming, if you will. Say goodbye to maple. Expect changes in the trees we see. Several varieties of southern oak, are moving north. As the climate warms, said Dr. Nina Basic, a professor at the Urban Horticultural Institute at Cornell University. But native birch trees and sugar maples are starting to have trouble because of the summer heat and drought, she added, so they will gradually become less prevalent. In coming years, there will be native plants, but there'll be different native plants, said Dr. Basic. They won't be the same plants that were here pre-Columbus. Southern species are thriving at the New York Botanical Garden in the Bronx. What started out as an experiment planting exotic species thought too sensitive to survive outdoors during New York winters has become a successful and ongoing project. Whoa. Japanese flowering apricot and camellias, which normally thrive in the South. Camellia is the state flower of Alabama, and Japanese flowering apricot has been popularized by the North Carolina State University Arboretum. Successfully bloomed there last spring, Mr. Forrest said. He continued, if you had asked me 25 years ago if they could survive unprotected, let alone thrive in New York, I'd say humbug. Also good, excellent word, humbug. Balderdash. Magnolia trees, a symbol of the deep south as well as dogwoods, are also hardy throughout the city. Trees from Asia and South America are taking root. There you go. The monkey puzzle tree, South American tree that is growing outside in New York City. Mr. Roddick of Brooklyn's Botanic Garden, actually had his first big arboreal surprise in the mid-1990s, similar to his fig tree epiphany. A few years later, he noticed that a gardener had failed to cut back the crepe myrtle trees, which normally froze in the winter. The trees were budding. We were shocked. Over the last 22 years, only once has an ice storm damaged the trees, he said. Crepe myrtles are natives to Southeast Asia, India, and parts of the Central and South Pacific. They are also very common in the American South, where in the summer they splash the landscape with red, pink, and lavender and white blossoms. Until recently, crepe myrtles in New York City would grow no larger than a shrub. Gardeners would cut them down to the root for the winter. Now the Brooklyn Botanic Garden grows several varieties year-round, and some have grown into 20-foot trees. They can be found throughout the city and the northern suburbs. Also, invasive weeds are out of control. Voracious plant-eating pests are increasing, right? All over everywhere, right? Tree-destroying beetles and all kinds of pests are flourishing. Bugs that used to die off in the winter are now surviving and have a chance to multiply. This is going on. Rain is heavier, storms more frequent. I'm just kind of skimming through the last of this article because I am running out of time for this. But yeah, there you go. I actually remember I used to travel through New York to play music not that long ago. Maybe it was, not that long ago. I used to travel through New York pretty often. But more often than not, if I was in New York in the winter, it would be quite warm. I remember at least 2 or 3 times being in New York in November, and it was like 70 degrees outside. People were walking around in shorts, 70s or low 80s. And everybody was like, beautiful weather, That's wasn't, and I remember, thinking like, yeah, that's not normal for New York. Hey guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel The links below, PayPal, Patreon, Square. Also, if you'd like to watch the live streams, you can watch the live streams on my Patreon channel. You can subscribe for as little as $1. So hopefully I will see you over there, and thanks so much.